Hi, loved ones. This is Helen Faith Drummond. I am the Bridge Guide, and I'm coming to you to answer 9 very beautiful questions that were posed to me by the daughter of a friend who is now getting ready to have her first child. And she is a tremendous human being and has great insight. And she asked me these questions in all humility, and I really almost didn't know what to tell her because they're the big questions of the universe. And yet, as we're going into what is for some people a very busy holiday season, at a time when most mammals our size are hibernating and we're in deep rest, I wanted to answer these questions for her in a simple way in the effort to support her where she is now. And I'm going to read the question and then I'll offer a simple answer because honestly there are no simple answers for these questions, but I'm going to answer them out of respect. So thank you, my dear Ms. K, for believing that I'm someone who can answer these questions, and here goes. So the first question is, what is mindfulness and how to do it? So again, huge question, but the short answer is that mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. And how to do it is to pay attention on purpose. Now, paying attention is something that we cultivate, right? It's a muscle that we exercise. So we have learned how to pay attention in school. We've learned how to pay attention to our bodies, so we don't fall down or bump into things. We've learned how to pay attention to the telly. Most of us now can do 2 or 3 things at once, and then we know somewhere in the back of our mind when our show comes back from commercial. So paying attention on purpose is, if we're practicing mindfulness to achieve a certain goal, for example, we wish to have a more peaceful holiday, we would then pay attention to what's going on with that motivation. The act of paying attention itself brings us into the moment, and our complex and highly amazing nervous system, including the heart, which is more than just a physical muscle, it's an enormous manifestation machine. By setting it the task of paying attention with a view to having a more peaceful holiday, we will often have stunning revelations about how this could happen. But we need to give ourselves the time and space, and we need to take care of ourselves so that paying attention is possible. So for example, if we let ourselves get a bit ragged, it is more difficult to pay attention when we're tired or sleepy or overwrought. And so what we do over time is we build up our mindfulness muscles, and this builds what we call resilience. So when we practice mindfulness with no particular goal, for example, where we gain ability to pay attention on purpose, then what happens is, on the fly, as it were, we can be mindful of something and often receive a solution. That is one way to look at mindfulness. Another way is, if we are trying to receive the benefits of a mindful lifestyle, which frequently involve better health, better sleep, better relationships, what that means is we start paying attention to things whether or not we think they have a value. Now, for myself, this was one of the biggest challenges for me because I was a bit of a know-it-all when I was younger, and I would be desperate to understand and know things. And when you're a child, you look at the surroundings, and if you're someone such as me who wants to know the answers and wants to be able to master things, you might draw the wrong conclusions, for example. So this is how we get things like playground politics and popularity games and sibling rivalry even. So when I was younger and I was a know-it-all, I would sometimes appear to fabricate a fact. And I just couldn't get past my desire for knowing what was the right answer. So for me, getting to know to pay attention without any particular goal, I ended up taking a lot of teachings. I've taken decades of teachings, actually. And for the past 20 years or so, I disciplined myself to write down as much of everything that the person was saying that I could. And what I realized was when I would go back and listen to the recordings, which I would often also record, I would notice that when I was writing things down, I was already editing and leaving things out and filling in the blanks based on what I thought I already knew. So this is an example of paying attention on purpose with no particular agenda. I guess you could say my agenda was to get better at paying attention, but the mechanics, at least one of the tools that I used, was to start paying attention to really, really specific things. This is something we do with certain kinds of meditation, where we mindfully eat, for example, and we really taste the food, and we really pay attention to how it feels in the mouth, or the temperature, or how heavy it is when we pick it up, or what thoughts it brings to mind, and we just pay attention to it for paying attention's sake. So these are all tools that we can use to start to develop our mindfulness muscle, and these are some of the reasons why we might want to develop mindfulness. So that's probably not a great answer to your first question, but it's the best I can do at the moment in such a short period of time. So we're going to move on to your second question. The second question is, how do I cope with going through a difficult time? Now, this one brings a lot of weight to my heart because coping with a difficult time is such a complex matter, isn't it? So the actual coping, once we get our resilience up from meditation and mindfulness, it does get easier. And yet, I think the short answer for coping with a difficult time is taking very good care of yourself. Really try to feel and know and experiment with things that make you feel taken care of. It is always easier to think on a full stomach, for example. If you're starving, it's very difficult to weigh things up in true priority fashion because the priority will be to get something to eat. So by the same token, when we're hurting and we're trying to cope with something, sometimes the last thing we want to do is sit down in a quiet, dark room and give ourselves 5 minutes to listen to a really, really nurturing piece of music. But sometimes that is something that will allow us to discharge the emotions or just gain some space for ourselves. So that is a very short answer to a very, very big question. But I think being one's own parent, if you could think of the very best parent that you have, that you could ever possibly imagine, when you're coping with a difficult time, try to be that person for yourself. And there's all kinds of other things, of course, like reaching out if you need help, asking for help if you need help. When we need help, sometimes we just don't want to ask for it because we just have no idea what's supposed to happen. So I also want to extend to you that if you ever think there's something I can do, I hope that you'll reach out to me. But meanwhile, please take very good care of yourself. So your third question is, how to become more grateful and what practices would I recommend? Well, this is a lovely question because gratitude is one of the things that I actually use in my Facebook groups and my teaching. I have these little teaching cohorts where we all work together. And gratitude is a training for the mind. It is a fact that we live in a paradise world, and whether or not we see it is a function of our level of suffering at the moment and our training and ability to be able to see the truth. What do I mean by we're living in an Eden planet? just by the fact that our parents are willing to have us gives us this body, which the preciousness of the body can never be overemphasized, because there's absolutely no way to do things on planet Earth as an individual for ourselves and have the experiences that we want to have without a body. And I know that the planet at the moment, it's an artificial division between human nature and regular nature, okay? There's no such thing. Humans are a part of nature, not apart from, right? Human nature is also nature. So the thing is that that separation that human beings are mistakenly keeping between themselves and the planet is part of what is really causing most of the problems. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because in actual fact, the things that we need to survive, like food and water and air, cannot be obtained at any price. They are priceless. We do pay for the service of somebody else growing the food, but that is something that is given from the land, right? The food actually comes from the ground. Everything we hold valuable, money, buildings, children, experiences, they either happen on planet Earth or they come from planet Earth. Our bodies are borrowed food, and maybe in the test tube they could create a few things, but it's nothing compared to what the planet creates on a minute by minute, daily, seasonal basis. So one of the roots of gratitude practice can be to just sit and appreciate what it is that you already have and what you enjoy. And naturally, that practice will lead you to feeling thankful. Because when we really, really, really think about what we have and what we enjoy and where it comes from, it does naturally produce a state of sort of grace. We realize how blessed we are, and that can be a very wonderful place to start a gratitude practice. So that's a place to start. So let me go to your next question. So question number 4 is how to become kinder. Now, the very, very short answer on that is I actually don't think you need any help, my dear Ms. K, on becoming kinder. I think you're an extremely kind person, except perhaps to yourself, and I know that's a painful truth for many of us. We're often very kind to others and not kind to ourselves. So this is actually a shortcut. If we have a value to become kinder to others or kinder in general, we can be kinder to ourselves. It's a best place to start. And again, going back to the human nature and regular greater nature connection and complete unity of those two, when we are nice to ourselves, we are actually helping the planet, because a happy, joyful person is putting out so much more. A happy, joyful person is blessing others. A person who's going through a hard time, who's working with it and reaching out and solving their problems and taking the best view that they can with things. We don't need to be falsely positive, but when we take care of ourselves in whatever way we need to, we're literally contributing to the health of the planet, and we're helping everybody with whom we come into contact. So let me go to the next question. So this is question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is how can I express my feelings without hurting anyone? And honestly, this is the one that made me stop, because a lot of times when we express our feelings, they are in proximity to people we care about. And I want to give you an image to explain what I'm going to say next. So imagine you're walking down the beach hand in hand with the one you love, and one of you steps on a sharp piece of shell, and your elbows go up, and you say, ah, and your elbows go up and you sort of back up. Well, what do you sometimes do? You might even hit the person in the eye that you're walking next to. And the only reason they're getting hit in the eye is because they're walking next to you. So I think there are two parts to this. And your motivation is obviously not to hurt people on purpose. So we're just going to draw a line under that, and we're not even going to address that because that is something for a whole other time. And I do actually have some teachings to share on that. But if you're expressing something, one really good trick is to express it in terms of yourself. So for example, if you are experiencing pain around a loved one's behavior and it's affecting you and you really need to address it, there are two ways to say it. One might be, you're driving me crazy, you're making me sad. Every time you do that, I have to go and self-medicate, right? Whereas another way to say it might be, wow, I am really uncomfortable right now. I really can't handle what's going on right now. Can you see how that might create some space? When we take responsibility for our feelings, and we need to express them, and we have every right to express them. You know, you can't leave that stuff in the body. There are ways, and again, I do have another thing, for example, working with anger that I'm going to post up here in a little while. And there are ways to work with the physical energies of emotions. But I think the trick vis-a-vis what you're talking about is if you can handle it in terms of talking about how it's affecting you. And then the person might just get it. They might realize it's something to do with what they're doing, or you can remove yourself from the situation, or if you can't, you could ask the person for their help, right? Oh my gosh, I'm having such a hard time right now. Could I ask you to help me with that? And if the person is any kind of friend, they're probably going to say yes. And then you could say, you know, I don't know why, but I don't seem to be able to stop being sad when I hear you talking about such and such. Instead of saying, every time you do that, it gets on my last nerve and all that, and I just don't want to see you ever again. You see the difference? I don't know if that'll help, but I hope that it does. Let's go on to your next question. How can I stop being negative about myself? Well, I'm going to direct you to how to cope with going through a difficult time, because being negative to ourselves is a habit. It is. And in fact, I have observed that some very good and kind people, in an effort to be better or perfect, often criticize and crunch themselves down, or they get into situations where they feel less than. So just start by taking really good care for yourself, okay? And we're going to address that in another one. I'm totally trying to keep this to under 20 minutes, and stopping being negative about yourself is a function of self-care and self-love. So focusing on that. And it's an enormous question, so we're just giving you, again, my top of mind as a thought starter, and then we can talk. So the next question is how to stop being in such a rush and to be able to slow down and enjoy life. This is a lifetime of work. This is helped with mindfulness. So I'm going to direct you to the first one, which is practicing mindful enjoyment of whatever you have in front of you that you enjoy. So really wallow in it. Really, what I like, the word I like to use, I don't even know if it is a word, but I use it all the time, is to succulate, right? Just really revel and just enjoy and uptake all the wonderful experiences and feelings that you're getting from whatever it is you're working on. And that, just by and of itself, will cause you to slow down and enjoy your life more. So the second to the last question is how to connect with the earth more. So again, I'm going to direct you to the fact that human nature is also nature, and by loving yourself, you are connecting to the earth, and by slowing down and being mindful, you will begin to notice. Another thing you can do is, at some point during the day, I like to do it first thing in the morning. The first time I sit, whether it's sitting up out of bed or sitting down for a cup of tea, the first moment that I have to sit with any sort of leisure, I sit, I put my feet flat on the ground, I'm doing it right now, and I feel myself rooted to the earth. And when I do that, I start to feel gratitude for the fact that the earth is always there. When my feet fall on that earth, she doesn't move, she catches me. When I go outside, the fresh air is there, right? All traffic smells aside. When I go further away from industry and pollutants, the air gets sweeter and sweeter. So mindfulness can really help us here. Just by going and looking at a flower mindfully really, really connects you with nature. So we have a whole class on this as well. So I will post that to you. And your last question is how to handle pressure. So I know this one is actually a big one for you, my dear. And many times pressure is a function of time and expectation. So sometimes we can lengthen the time, sometimes we cannot. Sometimes we can lessen the expectation. I'm not talking about other people's expectations of us. I'm talking about our own expectations of ourselves. And again, this goes back to even the motivation behind your questions, which is you are always blessed one, always trying to become what you're calling a better person. I'd love to actually ask you at some point, and this may not happen until you're 40. Well, that didn't happen for me for quite a long time. But to give yourself a break and allow yourself to have moments in your life where you just do it on your own time. And I know when we have a job, for example, things get very competitive, okay? So I'm not suggesting to let advantageous opportunities pass you by. If you'd like to take them and you'd like to put the pressure on yourself to excel and exceed and compete, go ahead and do that. And yet we must also take care of our physical body, and we have to do it without the crushing expectations, right? So what we can do is we can have an intention to do a good job, and we can figure out what that means, but then stop. Don't overdo it. Find out what is the most important part of it and do that first. And always give yourself a lot of celebrations and rests and rewards along the way as much as you can. Even if it's, again, listening to 5 minutes of music that you love, getting up and down and jumping around, looking at a picture of your dog, whatever it is. And then when you do big things that you have worked for years for, please give yourself a present. So that's it, okay? It's about a few minutes longer than I expected, but I just wanted to give you this from my heart. You gave me this list, and I wanted to give you some sort of response. So I'm going to upload it now, and I'm wishing you a very, very, very wonderful rest of your year and a lovely pregnancy ahead and a wonderful, easy birth and all the love and blessings and joy in the world. All right? Bye for now.